Large polyps require piecemeal EMR, which is associated with a higher risk of recurrence than ESD, which was developed for en-bloc resection but is a technically difficult procedure requiring specialized training. Whereas simple hybrid techniques have been described before, we set out to describe a unique hybrid technique utilizing a double balloon platform. Our hypothesis was that the double balloon hybrid EMR approach would facilitate an en-bloc resection of a pseudopolyp compared to those using conventional means alone. First, a circumferential incision was made around the lesion. The scope was then removed from the oversheath and a snare placed around the tip of the endoscope. This freed up the working channel so a biopsy forceps could be used to lift the lesion up. The idea being that the snare could then be released and passed over the lesion, which would be pulled up by the biopsy forceps. Here we show you a side-by-side representation of the procedure, the left being conventional EMR and the right being the double balloon hybrid EMR. After injection of the lesion, in the conventional method, repeated snaring is performed in a piecemeal fashion until the entire lesion is removed. We have added specimen counters in order to keep track of the specimens removed. In the double balloon hybrid technique, first of all a circumferential incision is performed in order to free up the margins. Once the margins are complete in the double balloon hybrid technique, the borders are further demarcated to ensure that it's freed up. Upon ensuring that the borders are freed up, the middle of the lesion is injected with submucosal injection fluid. After this, the endoscope is removed, the snare is placed on the outside of the endoscope, and the biopsy forceps can then be used to grasp the lesion and lift it into the lumen. Once this happens, the snare is then looped off the end of the endoscope and placed and positioned around the margins of the incised polyp. At this point, the snare is appropriately positioned and the grasper can be also manipulated in order to ease the tissue into the snare noose. As we're using an overtube, the scope can be moved independently of the snare in this case in order to visualize the proximal border and to ensure appropriate placement of the snare. We hypothesized that this lack of independent movement and ability to visualize this proximal margin is one of the reasons why we see such high recurrence rates in the hybrid procedures that we see in the literature. Once positioned correctly, we can then apply energy in order to remove the polyp from the serosa. Here you can see the comparison of the specimens removed in the two techniques. In conclusion, the double balloon hybrid EMR technique enabled complex lesion removal en bloc, and it appeared to have a procedural time non-inferiority as both of these techniques took approximately 20 minutes.